Bloodborne is the latest offering from Japanese developer From Software, and a spiritual successor to the popular Dark Souls franchise. This PlayStation 4 exclusive title features aggressive, fast-paced combat, extreme challenge, and a deep, intriguing story told within a foreboding and fascinating world. Since 2009, From Software has treated us to the haunting worlds of Boletaria, Lordran, and Drangleic, packed to the brim with horrifying foes and seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Now, we find ourselves in Yharnam, a land that not only follows in the traditions of its forefathers, but also threatens to crown itself as the most immersive, ominous, and deadly world yet. Birthed by the dark, twisted imagination of creative director Hidetaka Miyazaki, Bloodborne begins as a story centered on the bleak city of Yharnam, a place plagued by a terrible sickness that transforms the infected into frightening beasts. It's the night of the hunt, and you, the player, are just in time to partake in the bloody affair. While there isn't much in the way of outright narrative, Bloodborne's story is vast and complex. Through reading the descriptions of items you find along your journey, more information is presented that sheds light on the who, how, and why of various events and characters. Speaking with the many enigmatic citizens of Yharnam will also offer more interesting, if not incredibly cryptic, information on what's going on in the world and their own personal stories. What starts as a relatively straightforward concept of hunt down beasts and try to stay alive eventually evolves into a morbid tale of cultist rituals and cosmic deities that evokes an entirely Lovecraftian tone, both in concept and design, overshadowing and deepening the simple werewolf hunter story it began as. New discoveries create layer after layer of story content, explaining more about the nature of the disease, the strange celestial beings that are driving people insane, and your place in the midst of it all. These story elements must be researched and dissected to be understood, and what is presented is more than intriguing enough to warrant further inspection, but not required to enjoy the game. Perhaps Bloodborne's strongest aspect is its atmosphere. The game instantly creates an atmosphere of pure dread with its sinister Gothic architecture and unsettling visages. While this style is dark and beautiful, it's only just the beginning. There is much to explore beyond Yharnam, and the atmospheric excellence will follow you through each and every area. The artistic style of the game elicits exactly what it attempts to from players, and you'll be constantly on edge when exploring uncharted territory. This heightens stress and involvement, truly immersing the player into a world that only grows more and more convincing. The level of detail in every texture is remarkable and reaches never-before-seen heights when compared to the rest of the PlayStation 4's catalog. Apart from the magnificent art direction, it's the sound design that truly immerses the player. Every area is treated with different ambient sound and perfectly complements the visuals and brings the world to life. Eerie screams and unsettling creaks abound as you travel through the environments, and every slash and stab really sounds and feels like you're cutting through flesh. Paying attention to the sounds around you can mean life or death, as audio cues sometimes allow you to predict what might be behind a door, around a corner, or what's creeping up behind you. Journeying through a world as dark and menacing as this, it's no surprise that making it through alive will be an arduous undertaking. From the moment the player enters the game, they are met with cold darkness and unyielding danger. The game makes sure to let you know that this is not a journey for the faint of heart, and only through sheer force of will and steadfast determination will you survive. It is important to know this going into the game, as those gamers looking for a fun pastime that they can breeze through without much effort will find that Bloodborne asks much more from players than most AAA titles. This is a game that will relentlessly punish players for every wrong turn, every misused item, every poorly timed attack, but these seemingly brutal mechanics can serve as learning experiences as you progress through a difficult area. It's through experimentation that you'll find eventual victory, and the more you die, the sweeter that victory tastes. This difficulty is one of the staples of From Software's Souls games that carries over to Bloodborne, and the game would be a much lesser experience without it. That being said, this aspect of the game does alienate a large portion of gamers. I cannot stress enough how important it is to go into this game knowing what you're getting into. Much like your character does in the game's opening scene, you as the player are signing a contract, a blood pact, if you will, that states that you are willing to undergo hours of progress only to have it all rendered worthless if you make one small mistake, that you understand extreme frustration may and most likely will occur, and above all, that you must never, under any circumstances, give up hope. All of Bloodborne's obstacles are conquerable, but not without tremendous resolve on the part of the player. Veterans of Demon's Souls and Dark Souls are very familiar with this mindset, and thus will get a lot of enjoyment out of this title. Though Bloodborne has its roots firmly planted in previous From Software games, it introduces just as many new mechanical features as it does old tropes. The most immediate change for experienced Souls players is the inclusion of a designated heal button. This means that the old days of square button Estus chugging have been replaced with triangle button blood vial injecting. Though this may be something of a challenge for players to adjust to after hundreds of hours with Dark Souls, it offers a very quick health recovery with a single button press, as opposed to the old system that sometimes meant cycling through a full set of different items before finding your Estus. Another welcome change comes with the absence of equipment load. Now, players can amass a large arsenal of weapons and equip any of them at no cost to their movement, roll, or dodging speed. This is a vital change that honestly had to happen in order for the game's combat to work. The intense, fast-paced nature of the game really doesn't lend itself to an overburdened mechanic, and though it may seem silly to be able to do quick and consecutive somersaults while holding a massive hammer, it was a smart design choice to implement this change. Possibly the most significant departure from previous From games is the inclusion of the Chalice Dungeon side activities. These are procedurally generated areas that players can enter in order to farm items, gain experience, and practice their skills by fighting mobs of enemies and mini-bosses. While the rooms in these areas are created randomly, they do become monotonous and don't really change all that much from room to room apart from their size. Though a player's first foray into a dungeon is thrilling and challenging, these areas quickly become cakewalks if you're delving mostly into the main game and regularly leveling. Despite this, these side activities offer a very welcome distraction from the main story, and I found them to be a great way to blow off steam after dying so many times against particularly difficult bosses. They keep the game fresh and fun, even in the midst of frustrating failure. One mechanic that could have used some improvement is the game's travel system. Bloodborne employs a hub world system that is most akin to the game's ancestor, Demon's Souls. Much like Demon's Souls' Nexus, Bloodborne has the Hunter's Dream. Here, you'll spend your experience to buy items and levels, upgrade your equipment, and sort out your inventory. This area's most important use, however, is transportation to the various areas throughout the main game. As you progress through an area, you'll run into lamps that act as checkpoints, where you'll respawn after you inevitably die a horrible, bloody death. Aside from this, lamps' only other function is to warp you back to the Hunter's Dream to regroup. Sometimes, though, you won't need to return to the hub world and would rather warp to another area of the main game. Lamps do not allow this. Instead, you'll have to warp back to the Hunter's Dream and choose your next destination from there. This is made especially irritating given the horrendous load times after initiating a warp or dying. From has issued a statement claiming that they will release a patch that fixes this problem, so hopefully this will soon be remedied. That, however, won't change the fact that players have to sit through two separate, miserably bland loading screens if they wish to travel from one lamp to another. and when farming items and experience, this becomes very tedious and time-consuming. I find it interesting that I had no problems with this when I played Demon's Souls, but it's a really big issue in Bloodborne. It could be due to the way Dark Souls 2 allowed warping to any bonfire in every area of the game right from the start. Those players who got used to that system will find warping in Bloodborne to be a woeful experience. At the heart of Bloodborne, it's all about the combat. Fights are fast and fierce, and the intensity of these battles outmatches that of any game I've played. There are little to no defensive items like shields or heavy armor to speak of, making reliance on dodging attacks and landing critical hits all the more vital to survive. Along with its unrivaled intensity, the game also provides close to limitless potential for combat variety. Though there isn't a staggering arsenal available to the player, each weapon has an alternate style and moveset that can be initiated with the simple tap of L1. I was floored when I realized while stringing together a combo, the act of transforming my weapon mid-swing caused it to perform a different attack that smoothly transitioned the weapon from slash attacks to blunt attacks. These trick weapons open up an astounding amount of different ways to deal damage and more than makes up for the relatively small number of unique weapons. The game also features secondary weapons in the form of guns and torches. Torches, while not great for offensive use, offer illumination in the many dark areas of the game. I was pleased to discover that some areas were simply far too dark for me to walk through without taking out my torch. A clear improvement of the mechanic introduced in Dark Souls 2. Doing this, however, means that you don't have ready access to your guns, which depending on your playstyle, could mean defeat. Bloodborne takes a different approach to firearms in the sense that they are not all that great at killing enemies so much as staggering them and opening up opportunities for critical hits. A perfectly timed blast of your blunderbuss and your opponent will fall to their knees, giving you a short time window to run up to them, plunge your fist into their gut, and wrench out their innards. Another way to score critical hits is to charge up your main weapon by holding the attack button while behind an enemy. Landing a hit this way will offer you the same opportunity but from behind, allowing for some truly extreme colonoscopies. Just like previous From games, players can summon other players into their game to help them navigate areas and take down tough bosses. They can also invade other players and attempt to kill them for experience, or simply for the pure sadistic pleasure of it. Partaking in online play requires insight, which is gained from item pickups throughout the game and encountering and defeating bosses. After insight is gained, players can use it to ring different types of bells, depending on which side of online interaction they want in the area they wish to play in. If a match is found, it's time for jolly cooperation or a bloody skirmish. At the time of this review, online matchmaking does not seem fully polished. Almost every time I tried to enter cooperative play, I had to wait anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes for the game to find just one person for me to play with. This could be partially due to lack of players in the areas I was looking, but even still, that's a very long time to wait, and it drew me out of my immersion just as much as the load screens. Second only to the game's atmosphere, the level design has got to be my favorite aspect of Bloodborne. For years, I've yearned to relive my first experience with the original Dark Souls, cautiously exploring every inch of an area and finding shortcuts that blew me away at the staggering amount of thought and care that went into constructing the playspace. Bloodborne has finally spelled the end of my search for that feeling. Every area contains multiple hidden paths that immediately reward the player for their exploration, not only with easy access to otherwise hard-to-reach areas, but also with the inner elation of time well spent and validation for the risk of investigating the unknown. Time and time again, I was treated to interconnected areas that I never saw coming. The lack of an in-game map really helped give these discoveries such an impact, and opening up these kinds of paths gives players the drive to delve deeper into this rich and captivating world. My only minor complaint about this facet of Bloodborne is the fact that more than a few areas employ the same shortcut techniques. Almost every level contains doors that won't open from one side or require a key, and elevators that are out of order until you find the right switch to operate them. Though these are great ways to create level interconnectivity, seeing the same space building techniques again and again gets somewhat tiresome. But that doesn't hinder the genius of From's expertly crafted levels. All things considered, Bloodborne is easily my favorite PlayStation 4 title to date, and a real standout entry to From Software's catalog of incredible games. Any PS4 owner looking for a thrilling, challenging, terrifying experience and can deal with some monotonous moments should not miss out on this game.